I am the 4 fears guy. So essentially I work with small business owners to help them get over or embrace what I call the 4 fears, the 4 most sort of common hesitations or interruptions that kind of get in the way of what they could possibly achieve. The interesting thing about failure is it's entirely subjective. And what we ourselves build up to be this picture of failure to someone else could be sort of very tiny or insignificant, or even just not noticeable. I want to do the 4 fears. I want to do the mindset, the business strategy, the supporting people, unlocking their kind of talents. That's what brings me the most joy. So the 4 fears, firstly you have
Mark.
Hi.
Hello and welcome to our podcast.
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you here, and we would like to hear about your business and what you do. So tell us.
Okay, so I'm Mark Franklin and I am the 4 fears guy, is how I label myself. So essentially I work with small business owners to help them get over or embrace what I call the 4 fears, the 4 most sort of common hesitations or interruptions that kind of get in the way of what they could possibly achieve. Those things that we sort of tell ourselves from time to time in terms of, am I good enough? Am I ready? Do I have enough time? What if I get things wrong? You know, it's things that we too often kind of say to ourselves. And my goal is to sort of help people just dial down some of that kind of noise and remind themselves how good they can actually be.
Would you be able to tell us more about these 4 fears and what they are?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so the 4 fears, firstly you have the fear of not being ready, which is essentially sort of perfectionism, I suppose. It's that idea of I'm not prepared to take action yet until everything is just right. It's one that I'm kind of guilty of myself in terms of, there's something you need to do, something you want to share with the world, but you're just nervous about sort of putting it out there because you want to spend a bit more time just tidying it up, perfecting it, making sure it's absolutely perfect. And of course, there's no such thing as perfectionism. So there really comes to a point where you just have to let it go and let it out into the world. But it leads quite nicely into the second fear, which is this fear of not being good enough. Because again, you're sitting there thinking, I can't share this yet, it's not good enough. Or equally, again, we say things to ourselves because you've got that imposter syndrome, comparing yourself to others. I couldn't possibly host a podcast like Pasha. She's so good at this, and I'm all bumbly and nervous, and I couldn't be as calm and cool as you are. And again, we get in our own way, and we forget all those amazing things that we've already achieved. Because wherever you are in life, there's that whole backstory, that sort of body of evidence that proves that you're very, very capable of lots of different things. And if we can tap into that, again, that sort of that body of evidence, that proof, and kind of work out really what good enough actually looks like for you, then again we can kind of embrace that emotional energy, I suppose, and turn it into something more positive. The third fear is the fear of not having enough time, which I think is the fear that we all default to first, that sort of concept of, I'm not going to get this done yet. It's going to take more work than I think I can achieve. This is going to sound really harsh. It's a bit of an excuse, the time one, because it's never really about not having enough time. It's more about not using the time you have on the things that are going to make the biggest difference. And when you actually sit down with someone, and you can do all sorts of things, there's time management hacks and there's productivity charts and things, it's very easy to kind of sit down and work out your weekly calendar and see how many hours you've got to spend on things. But when you've actually got that in front of you saying, okay, I possibly do have that extra hour I need, then you kind of realise that those other fears are coming into play. It's not that I don't have time, it is that nervousness, that kind of, is it good enough? Am I ready? And then the big one, which is the 4th fear, the fear of failure. this idea that, what if I get it wrong? What if I look silly? What are people going to think of me if everything isn't perfect? And the interesting thing about failure is it's entirely subjective. And what we ourselves build up to be this picture of failure to someone else could be sort of very tiny or insignificant, or even just not noticeable. But we default sometimes to sort of catastrophizing, I suppose, sort of building things up to be much bigger than they actually are. When, again, if you look back at all those times when you were good enough, all those little things you achieved, even if you did face some sort of hesitations or sort of interruptions on the way, they were never quite as bad, certainly afterwards, as they felt in the moment. And those are the fears.
If you want to start, as let's say that you have this idea and you want to turn it into business, and then now you're dealing with all these 4 fears.
Yeah.
What is usually or typically the biggest one out of the 4 that stops people from taking the first step and the next step and the next one?
It's a really good question, and obviously it varies from person to person. And equally, it's not so much that you are sort of caught up in one fear. They all kind of, say, overlap and interplay. So typically, if I'm having a conversation with someone, because also what you need to bear in mind is talking about fear is taking someone to a place of vulnerability. So it can be quite a sort of difficult and emotional conversation. Not everyone is comfortable sort of going there, which is why, if I was to say to you, what might be holding you back partially, the first thing you're most likely to say is, I haven't got time. That's an easy and quite logical one to kind of present, because you either have time or you don't. And it doesn't start sort of expanding the conversation into what is it you're trying to achieve, and why is that so important to you that you're prepared to find the time. So once we get past it's not about the time, again, as I just mentioned, it then starts sort of manifesting that perhaps it is that sort of belief that I'm not good enough, I have a bit of self-doubt, I'm sort of low self-confidence, I'm focusing on this perfectionism, this getting things to a point where they're so perfect, I'm prepared to let the world see them, when in fact, if you're really passionate and excited about something, you should be confident enough just to let it out into the world and let people enjoy it. Because the energy that you're sort of putting out there, you'll very quickly get back. So there is not necessarily sort of one fear that manifests more than others. They all kind of overlap.
And what about money? Because this is something that many people always say, oh, I don't have the money to do this. Oh, I don't have, what if I run out of money? What if I, and then it's like another, big obstacle. So what are your thoughts on that?
Again, really good question. And sort of when I've been working with sort of people, money is almost like the 5th fear. It's like the invisible other fear. But I suppose when you start talking about money, money means different things to different people. And for a lot of people, the default kind of reaction to money, having money, not having money, is that measure of success or failure. So if I don't have enough money to do this, is that because I'm not good enough? I haven't sold enough of my products, I haven't got enough clients, I'm not generating enough leads. So again, when the conversation goes a little bit further, it's not always just about the finances. It's more about what is it that having or not having that money is doing in terms of your mindset and your confidence. So yes, money, a bit like the time, is one of those sort of conversations that you might begin with. But actually when you sort of dig a little bit deeper, although of course, there is that black and white, I just don't have the money so I can't do it. That's fine, But even so, because people have such a complicated relationship with money, there's always something just a little bit sort of under the surface there that is really where I think the hesitation sits. Yeah,
and I think an interesting fact about the money, to link it to the 4 fears that you're talking about, especially when it comes to things like time, for example, is like you spend so much time wandering around things and thinking about these fears that you eventually run out of money even when you have it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll just to share sort of part of my own story, because I've been out on my own for a year now. It'll be a year next week. This is quite exciting. But I'm very aware that some of the things I'm now working on, I could have been doing those months ago, but I had that voice in my head saying, it's not quite ready to put out there yet. So hold on, spend a bit more time on it, and then go. And it's kind of, I'm guilty of my own kind of fears there in terms of I should have just gone for it. And I would have learned from those experiences and perhaps been a little bit further down the line. You never know.
So how did that all started? So you have this business and you have, you had this idea in your head. Basically, how did that start? Why did you decide to do this?
Okay. So it was a very long, sort of convoluted story, I suppose. So my background's graphic design. So that's what I did at university. When I found my first job, I was working design and communication, and my passion really was sort of that idea of taking people's stories and communicating them visually in a way that connected to their audience. And that's how I sort of found myself in a sales environment, essentially, and working sort of within a company where we had this community of independent business owners. My job was very much to produce the kind of marketing resources and messaging that they could lean on to grow their businesses. And what I was kind of finding was, for some of those people, the messages and the tools were landing really well, and they were taking them and they were running and they were having huge success. And for others, they weren't. And I was kind of really interested in this idea that it's the same tool, so why is it working for some people and not others? And what I sort of began to uncover, and this took quite a long time, was it was more about their own story, their own beliefs, their own hesitations. It wasn't about the tools, it was about what they felt they could do next or couldn't do next because of those kind of hesitations and fears. And as I kind of grew into my role, I moved across into sort of more leadership development and business development support, listening to those stories and helping people connect to, again, this kind of clarity and bravery idea. What is it you really, really want that's so important to you you're prepared to take action and achieve it? Helping people connect to that clarity and bravery and then see success was something that I just really enjoyed. I loved seeing people succeed and kind of get past some of those sort of noises they were creating for themselves. And that's what I do now. The only difference is now I'm doing it on my terms. So rather than just work with this community that were put in front of me by the company that I was sort of involved in, now I can kind of go anywhere and work with anyone and essentially hear more stories. Because that's what I love about what I do. Like I say, it's that idea of finding out what people want, what it is they're already capable of, and then helping them make that happen.
What is the typical behavior or mindset that you keep observing, in the people that come and, ask for your help?
Again, it varies because people are in different sort of places and have different sort of concerns or beliefs. But I think overwhelmingly, it's great when you're in a room of sort of small business owners and you're listening to the conversations. Everyone's very quick to lift each other up and talk about how well you're doing, and I love your business and I'm following your Instagram account and you're so good at real. Everyone's very good at celebrating others, but we're all very reticent or shy or hesitant to talk about ourselves. And I think that, again, is what I'm excited to kind of help people do. Just remind people just how good they really are. Look at everything that they've already achieved, look at the things they want to achieve and what they will bring to the world. Again, the kind of difference they will make by sharing their genius and helping people connect to that. And I keep using the word bravery, but it is all about just putting yourself out there, being a little bit vulnerable, but doing it because you're so passionate, excited about what you do, that the world needs to kind of enjoy that too. So yeah, it's a very long answer to a very good question. It's about taking people from a place where they don't think they can to a point where they are reminded and very comfortable in the idea that actually I can and I should, so I will.
You were talking about your passion and you said that one of your passions is, basically, talking to people and the communication and this, sales sort of thing. What are the other, if you want to summarize your passions, because what I got from what you said earlier was that you seem to be a very creative person.
Thank you.
So, what are your what are your passions, do you think, especially those that are helping you, achieve what you're achieving today?
Again, really good question. I've got all sorts of interests. Again, I've got a lot of creative skills in my sort of toolbox. So it's been lovely for me to be sort of playing with sort of design and marketing again. That's been really good fun. I'm also, outside of all of this, a musician. I've been playing drums for a very long time.
Oh.
But there's a lovely overlap, which again, in my sort of corporate role, I never really explored. But this idea of, so with drumming, which is a lot about technique, because it's very physical and you can burn yourself out quite quickly or get quite tired. But if you've got a really good technique, you can play very efficiently for a very long time and really serve the music. And I think there's a lovely analogy there which works within business in terms of, again, your day-to-day, your working week. If you're performing efficiently, if you're focused on the tasks that make the biggest difference, you can actually achieve a lot more without giving so much of your own energy. Because again, for business owners, I think one of our most precious resources is our energy. It's very easy to burn out, give too much of yourself to others. You need to be able to top up your tank. So if there is a way that you can take joy and passion back from what you do, but also perform your sort of business in a way that is both rewarding but not exhausting you, there's a lovely kind of connection there. So I do use that within my business. Some of the sort of presentations I do, the sort of keynotes and things, there's a bit of music in there because it's fun, it's different. People sort of at first are a little bit shocked by the noise because drums can be quite loud, but that in itself grabs attention. So it's a nice thing for me to play with. Like you say, it's one of my passions. I enjoy it, but it also serves what I'm trying to do.
I want to take a few steps back and go to when you were a child. What were you like as a child? And what were the things that you liked?
Well, you'd have to ask my mum and dad, I guess. What was I like as a child? I was happy. I had a very happy childhood. I was very fortunate. I'm an only child. So I think having to entertain myself probably sort of paved that path for being creative, having an active imagination, keeping myself busy and entertained. It was quite a sensitive soul. I'm only little, so I got a sort of bit of bullying attention, I suppose, when I was sort of small. And that, I think, from an emotional point of view, served me well. Now, because I'm quite connected to sort of emotion. Again, as I say, what I do now, you are having conversations about sort of quite personal things with people. So hopefully that allows me to kind of be a bit more sensitive and compassionate and sort of empathic, empathetic, whatever the word is. But yeah, I had a very happy childhood. Thank you. I think. Hopefully I was a good boy, my mum would say. Yeah.
And eventually, tell me what happened. So, what is it that led you to, again, the point that you started, in terms of, okay, now I want to start doing, not your business, but before that, between, the time that you were this happy little child and you were excited and you were sensitive and you have all these, you're developing all these wonderful skills,
yeah,
to the point that, you started your path and everything. What was that link in between? What happened?
That really is a long story. I've never really thought about it, to be honest. I mean, I had a very kind of traditional sort of upbringing and education. I mean, I'm sort of a child of the 80s, so I went to school, I did my A-levels at sixth form, I went to university. It's just kind of what you did. I came out of university and got a job. At no point back then was I ever thinking I'd run my own business or be kind of entrepreneurial. Just didn't cross my path, which in a way is crazy because my dad ran his own business, a very successful business, for 25 years. So if I'm thinking of a great example of somebody who was entrepreneurial and successful, there it was in my own home, but it didn't even cross my path. I was just, I wouldn't say conditioned, but I just had that expectation of myself. I'll go and get a proper job and earn proper money. And just through circumstance, really, like I say, I mean, the role that I was in up until this time last year, I grew from a sort of relatively junior design position all the way through to sort of running the sales division by exploring those stories. So it's very organic. I say, I mean, if someone had said to me when I started that job, one day you're going to be running the company and you'll be doing leadership and personal development and you'll be working with business owners in that set, never would have crossed my mind. But it just, I suppose if there's one word that would probably sum up the whole journey, it's probably curiosity. Very curious about people's stories. So when I was in that position, I could listen to these, I mean, it was hundreds, it was thousands of small business owners, listening to their stories, trying to find out what it was that, for some of them, meant they made progress and for some didn't. That, I think, was what inspired me to kind of keep trying new things and, like I say, listen and offer more help, really. So, yeah, there you go. That's 30 plus years in a nutshell.
And what have been your challenges to get to where you got to, where you started your business? And what are your challenges now? And how are you dealing with them? Because having a business for yourself is very different. You know, it's sets of challenges that you're dealing with is very different. Now you have you're responsible for your business, for the people who come to you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, tell me about these challenges that you have on the way before you start your business and now that you have your business, and how do you deal with them?
In many ways, in terms of running my own business, I feel quite fortunate in terms of, again, perhaps going back to that only child thing, because I'm sort of quite comfortable in my own space, actually taking that responsibility for all the aspects of the business I'm quite comfortable with. So I do enjoy the sort of ownership of all the little kind of elements and aspects that you might not necessarily think of when you have that great idea of starting a business. I suppose the biggest challenge for me at the moment is sort of connecting to my audience in so much as I was saying before, the 4 fears are all about exploring vulnerability. And no one's putting up their hand saying, hey, come and talk to me, because I'm really vulnerable and I'm really struggling. No one likes to, again, put themselves in that kind of position of help. So it's playing, not a game, but it's sort of being there in the long term, proving and sort of building trust, really, I suppose, in my audience, that I am somebody who, again, hopefully it's a very good listener, understands the challenges they face, because throughout that big career that I was just talking about, I face every single one of those fears. I still do. We all do. So I have a lot of learned experience in terms of how to unlock and embrace those hesitations. But it is, it's about helping people come to a point where they think, this is someone who does understand what I'm going through, who I feel comfortable talking about that with, and who I believe will help me. I think the biggest challenge is having those conversations, particularly remotely as well. There's a lot of social media. I'm not a fan of social media, if I'm honest. And you're kind of sort of on there saying, this is how I can help, this is what I do, and it feels very sort of, dislocated. I'd much rather sort of be in the room having conversations. I love listening. This is very strange for me because I'm not actually a good talker. Bizarrely, I'd much prefer listening to other people's stories, and hopefully doing more of that will kind of bring people to the point where they think, yeah, this is something I know that I need. Not necessarily been comfortable up to now in terms of putting my hand up and asking for help, but yeah, let's see how Mark can actually help me.
I'm going to take you back to the point that you decided to have your own business.
Yep. How
was that feeling for you? Did you have that full fears at that time? And also, what was that, what was it like, basically? What was it like to, okay, I have this safe job which is paying me,
mm-hmm.
and I can go home, work and I know that I will get paid at the end of the month, to the point that now I want to do my own thing, and then let's just start it. So tell me about your experience and also your fulfilled.
Oh, there's two elements to that really. So I mean, I'd been in that role for 22 years, I think it was. So like I said, I'd progressed sort of significantly. The role had changed hugely. And as much as I loved that job, in the corporate world, there are things that you can't do, and I was starting to come up against things where I thought, this is I'm no longer as happy here as I would like to be. Plus, the things that I loved doing, again, this helping people, this, listening to the stories and so on, I was doing less and less of that, and I thought, okay, I want to pull this back and do the things that I love, things that I'm good at, and the things that ideally the world needs. What does that look like? It took me about a year, I think, from the point at which I thought, I need to move, to moving. And what was interesting, because in that time, coming back to my design and my branding background and things, I thought, I'll do that because I know it, it's easy, I'll be able to very quickly get some work in, the money will be fine, it's great. And then about 2 months after going out on my own, I got myself a business coach, because I thought I need that accountability. I need someone just to sort of keep me on track. And through just very early conversations, I thought, no, this is not right. I want to do the 4 fears. I want to do the mindset, the business strategy, the supporting people, unlocking their kind of talents. That's what brings me the most joy. So there's a quick 360 there. And I think, coming back to the other side of the story, because I'm so passionate about this, and I have that real clarity in terms of I know what it looks like, I know what I can do, so I'm very familiar with the fears, I know how to kind of embrace and work through them, I know, and it really excites me. I love it when you see someone kind of have that aha moment of, oh my goodness, I actually can do this. And I'm so sort of clinging tightly to that all the challenges of starting your own business and so on so kind of are secondary to but this is really worth doing. And I think that's what's still exciting me. When people say to me now, sort of friends say, how's it going? My first response is, I'm so happy. I am so happy doing what I'm doing, because it really is what I want. And I just feel genuinely excited every day. I don't get the Sunday scaries anymore. I'll be excited to get back on the bus after this and do some more work when I get home. And it's things like that. It's having that clarity and, like I say, the bravery as well. Bravery to go out and do it, but the clarity of knowing this is really what I want. And I think that's what's just, exciting me. And that's what I'd like other people to have too.
You seem to be very passionate and excited about what you do, which is actually a very good thing.
Yes, I am. Honestly, it's funny, again, reflecting on the last sort of 3-4 years, people, good friends have said to me, the old Mark is back, which is, it's a lovely thing for them to say, but it obviously showed then that I was in a place that I shouldn't be, and now I'm back to where I should be, which is brilliant.
Other than the fact that, of course, it's, what you're doing is can be very impactful, have a positive impact on what people are doing. Do you have any, and of course the fact that it makes you happy as well, which is all very good from all angles. So, do you have any examples, or are there any recent examples of the impact that you've had on somebody's business or the way of their thinking that you would like to share with us?
Sure, yeah. I'm very mindful. I've talked about, hey, this is great and I love it and it's all about me. That's not the case at all. It is about those other stories, like you say. And they can really vary. I put a post out on LinkedIn earlier today sharing a story about someone that I worked with not that long ago. But for them, in terms of finding success, because you get a lot of stuff again on the social media about, have the 5k month, the 10k month, what is your business turning into? I don't know, those things kind of really are about what I'm about. And this particular story I shared today was a lady who was absolutely overjoyed that at the end of the week she had £20 in her purse from her business that she'd earned, and she thought, with that £20, I'm gonna buy fish and chips for my family on a Friday night. And it wasn't about the money. You know, it was this whole sort of pride and independence and the, hey, look, I've done this. I'm not dipping into the joint account. I'm not using money that was set aside for the bills. I'm not, I'm not asking my partner, who, in that particular instance, was the main breadwinner at the time. This is something that I have done. And it's stories like that just bring me joy, because it is all those little micro wins that I think add up, because that lady then went on to do some much bigger things, but for her that was a really big thing, and it was that kind of first step to dialing down some of those hesitations. Look, I can do this, I am good enough. Whatever I did that week to make that £20 happen proves that I'm not failing, I am succeeding. And that's where the conversation starts to get interesting, because more comes from that.
That's actually very good, very nice. If you are to talk about your future and the outlook, what does that look like?
Ooh. More of the same, I guess. Like I say, I'm not looking to build an empire or anything like that. I'd be very, very happy for myself just having a story like the one I just shared, within my business every week, or a couple of those. I'd love to do more sort of speaking workshops, I think, because again, that's when you start building the relationships and building that trust. I've actually just about to launch sort of a membership program next month, where I can do some really sort of detailed work with individuals. But I say it's not about what I'm offering, it's more about, and I think this is coming back to sort of the challenges in my business, this is the thing that excites me the most but takes the most time. It's about other people's stories. So the more stories I can hear and help be a part of and help support, and the more conversation I can have with somebody who then decides what brilliance looks like, what success looks like for them, that's what excites me about the future. It's more conversations, I guess.
If you want to say that maybe one person or one thing, or more than that, a few people, or one person at any one time, influenced you to become who you are today and make all these decisions, who would that, or what would that be, or who would that be? That's a really interesting question. I don't know if I could put it down to one person. I mean, the first person that springs to mind is my old boss, who essentially got out of my way. Bless him. She's Lorna, remarkable lady, who, when I started with the company as a designer, allowed me to build a marketing team, allowed me to come up with ideas, and essentially just encouraged me to try new things. And again, coming back to that curiosity, just be brave and kind of fail, essentially. And I think that played a big part in me finding that confidence to just keep trying and keep listening and keep asking questions. So if I had to name one person, it would be Lorna, my old boss. And if it is more than one person?
Well, again, my parents. It's funny to think about my dad's story, running his own business. When I was little, it didn't even occur to me that he was this successful entrepreneur creating opportunities for himself. It was just my dad. It's just everyone's dad is their hero, and mine very much is. But I suppose just the fact that I wouldn't say he made it look easy, because it was hard work, but he clearly enjoyed what he did. Again, I think that kind of taught me to do things that you love.
That's actually very, very interesting. especially the way that you know, you're saying that your dad was your hero, and you know, usually, you know, dads, you know, are the heroes. It's actually a very interesting, you know, in a good way, interesting, by the way, thing to think about, and then have that role model. So it's actually nice. The final question: if you have one piece of advice to somebody who's listening or is watching, somebody who has just started their journey or about to start their journey, or they don't want to start their journey, they just want to get inspired, what would that be?
I think that would come back to the sort of the clarity question, or the 5 whys, as I call it. So what is it you really, really want, and why is that important to you? And then when you've answered that question, it's repeating, and why is that important to you? And then why? 5 times, 5 whys. Because as soon as you connect to what it is that you really want, that really, you know, lights up your heart, makes you happy, it's the thing that you want to give as a gift to the world, everything else becomes a little bit easier. Dialing down those fears becomes a bit easier. Having the bravery to set the business up, have the conversations, make the phone calls, try and sell what it is you do, because not everyone's comfortable with, you know, the concept of selling. But all of those sort of challenges become just that little bit easier because you're so connected to the thing that you want to bring into the world. So, clarity. Spend as much time as you can thinking about what it is you really, really want and why. And that should unlock everything else.
Mark, it was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. No, this has been lovely.
Your story, and also thank you for sharing the, you know, the insights, and also about the 4 fear.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you again. It's been brilliant.